Thanks, Rena, and thanks to all of you for being here for a late afternoon session. We really appreciate y'all being here with us. My name is Courtney McAllister. I'm a solution architect at Atypon, and I'm the current president of NASIG. And I'm joined today by my lovely colleagues, and I'll let them introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Joanna Ball, and I'm Managing Director of the Directory of Open Access Journals. But why I'm here today is because I'm also Chair of UKSG.
And I'm Michelle Colquitt. I'm the Continuing Resources and Government Information Management Librarian at Clemson University Libraries, and I am a member of NASIG.
So this is a topic that's like near and dear to our hearts. So we wanted to try to scope our comments to be respectful of everyone's time. So we'd like to talk a little bit about the context of professional organizations and tech services, why we think these may be especially helpful for folks doing e-resource management, cataloging, things along those lines. Amongst ourselves, we have experience with UKSG and NASIG, so we'll talk a little more about those and others. And then we want to make this a little more interactive, so we'll have some discussion. We'll be integrating some polling into the presentation as well. We're definitely trying to avoid that sage on the stage dynamic and make this as engaging and dynamic as possible. So question that we asked ourselves, why talk about professional organizations? We brainstormed about this and we thought about it, and I think that especially for those of us working in technical services, there's a lot of information seeking needs that can be challenging to overcome in various ways. A lot of what we do is not taught formally in the MLIS curriculum. There can be a lot of educational opportunities, right? There are lots of webinars. You can do Library Juice Academy courses. There's skill type, but sometimes you need a little bit of guidance to understand what resources would be helpful for you and how to kind of apply it to where you are in your career, where you want to go. A lot of our day-to-day jobs, we kind of learn as we go, and they're often in flux. And the community that you can find with a professional organization often helps you navigate those challenges and makes that learning a little more accessible. So I think in particular for those of us working in tech services and adjacent fields, professional organizations have a lot to offer. We have worked with UKSG and NASIG respectively, so we'll talk a little more about those, and I'll hand it over to Joanna to talk about UKSG.
Thanks, Courtney. And we're going to be doing a lot of jumping around and keeping you awake at this late hour. So for those of you, and I expect quite a few of you in the room who don't really know much about UKSG, I'm just going to give a very quick introduction. So we used to be the UK Serials Group, but we are now just UKSG, and that really reflects how our role has developed since we were first founded. It was focused on serials to start with, but now it's everything from books to primary sources. We've expanded our remit, so we cover open access, we cover scholarly communications, and we kind of go as far as going into how you work with digital resources, how you teach using digital content as well. So it is a much broader scope. We are a UK charity. And founded back in the 70s, really with the aim of bringing everybody in the information community together. And we certainly do that. We have librarians, publishers, intermediaries, consultants, everybody from across the whole kind of supply chain, as it were, is involved with UKSG. We are a membership organisation, but we are, and this is where we differ from NASIG, most of our members are organisations. So we have lots of volunteer involvement, but those volunteers, it tends to be their organisation that is a member. So we have a trustee board who governs UKSG. We have a number of committees around conference support, our open access journal, events, and education as well. So there's lots of opportunities for people to get involved. But we do have, and again, I appreciate we're very lucky to have an employed executive team to support our work. We have a flagship conference, which is really, I would say, it is the Charleston of the UK, which generates most of the income for the organisation, and that's a huge piece of work to organise that event every year. But we also have, as part of our charitable remit, we organise webinars, events, and other things as well. And I'll talk a bit more about our strategic vision later on, but it's very much focused on including, connecting, innovating, and delivering. So I'll pass back over to Courtney now to talk a little bit about NASIG.
I feel like we need music cues to make that a little more exciting, but you don't want to hear me sing, so we won't go that way. NASIG was the North American Serials Interest Group when it was first founded. However, we are more than serials. Much like UKSG, we've expanded kind of the scope of the areas of interest that we represent, and we're also international. So the North American component is not really indicative of NASIG, but that is where our name originated. But now NASIG is just NASIG. We don't use the acronym. We are an independent nonprofit organization, and we focus on the publishing, acquisition, and distribution of resources. We're all volunteer. We're member-led as well, which I think is an important dynamic that drives the organization forward. And our membership consists of librarians, publishers, vendors, library school students, educators working towards common goals. And it's often a place where people come together with different points of view and learn from one another and kind of embrace a growth mindset. We also have an annual in-person conference, much like UKSG, and we've started experimenting with standalone virtual conference as well to create additional opportunities for information sharing and growth. We also have continuing education programming and a number of committees that work year-round to contribute to deliverables like our core competencies, the digital preservation model, which you may have seen. So there's a lot of activity that happens year-round for our organization. And we also strive to be really dynamic in partnering with others who are active in the field, partnering with UKSG, NISO, IFLA, and entities like that. So now we're going to make this a little more enticing with some polling. Yay!
Okay, so we debated, given the size of the audience, as whether to stay with the Mentimeter or just do shows of hands. But actually, we decided it would be good to collect the information so that we can use it after. So we are going to be using Mentimeter. So you can see the code at the top of the slide there. So please, if you have a mobile device on you, please go and to that website, which is menti.com. And the code is, I hope you can read it from there, but if not, it is 66612488. And this is a very simple first question just to check that the tech is working. Yes, it is. Excellent. It's okay. So if you just go ahead and vote on that, the code is 66612448. And while we're waiting for these answers to come in, I'm just going to ask my colleagues how they got involved with. Yeah, of course. Yeah. 66612448. Courtney and Michelle, would you like to just reflect on how you got involved in the organisation?
I was hired by Clemson in September 2021 as the Continuing Resources and Government Information Management Librarian. I look over here because Rena was my search committee chair. But meanwhile, Clemson hired an electronic resources librarian to be a serials and GovDocs cataloger. So I was greatly out of my depth. So I quickly realized that I had to get caught up, get some continuing education. So I knew that I needed to become associated with NASIG. And I pretty much, the month I was hired, joined NASIG. So.
And before I ask you, Courtney, I'm just going to move on from this slide and get the next question coming in. So it's good to see that there are, well, actually not everybody is involved in a professional organisation. So it'll be interesting to see the answers that come into the next question, which is, why did you get involved? And we've heard from Michelle as to why she got involved with NASIG. So it'd be great to hear from those of you who are involved, what prompted you to get involved, while I ask Courtney the same question.
Yeah, so my involvement was really kind of serendipitous. I was on the cusp of a multifaceted transition. I'd worked in an academic library as a library staff member for a number of years and was working towards my library science degree. But I was also moving from a circulation interlibrary loan focus into tech services. So I knew there were a lot of changes in my kind of future, but I wasn't really sure how to navigate them. They seemed very intimidating, and it's hard to get started. It's hard to formulate your questions and figure out the help that you need. I had a lot of really willing and supportive colleagues, but they were already very well established in their careers. And I didn't really have a cohort in my library science program because we were online. And I saw a listserv announcement about free NASIG memberships for students, and they're still free for students, just saying. And I was like, free, that's in my price range. Maybe these kind, generous people can help me figure out how to make my life make sense. And spoiler alert, they helped a lot. So yeah, that's how I got involved. Just really lucky to see that at the right time.
And I'm just looking at the responses come in here, and I think what you've both been saying is reflected in a lot of these. And certainly from my perspective, with UKSG, I probably fall into that first category in that I was a bit of a fish out of water. I'd just come from working in liaison roles and into kind of managed to blag my way into a kind of a content delivery role, and thought, because there's a massive skills gap here, I really need to work on that. And I knew somebody else who was involved in the UKSG committee, and that's how I got involved, and I joined the editorial board at that point.
I did kind of bury the lead too. So for 10 and a half years, I was the juvenile probation officer before I became a librarian. So I, went to school, went to library school, graduated in 2011, and did not work full time in a library until 2017. So I knew that I needed continuing education.
So if we move to the next question now, what has been the biggest benefit of your involvement within a professional organisation? We would love to hear your responses, both on here, but also I think perhaps a little bit of discussion afterwards as well. I'm going to start by asking our panelists.
So I think that the biggest benefit is that I've gotten a community. I've gotten a community where I don't feel so, maybe like dumb or stupid or whatever to ask questions. I do have access to my predecessor. She works 10 hours a week, but I will say that sometimes I ask questions and, she's like, well, you should know that, but I don't have judgment for like, oh, well, you should know that, or, you should come out of library school immediately knowing that. No, I don't. So I have a community. I'm able to network. Like, I'm able to get out of my introverted shell and network and make connections and build relationships. And that's crucial.
Thank you.
So it's really hard for me to say like one singular benefit because I feel it's been very multifaceted for me. I 100% agree with Michelle's comment about community and what that means. Being a part of a professional organization also gave me a really valuable opportunity to get experience with things I was curious about that didn't have direct relevance to my formal job. I was really interested in publishing. I was working in interlibrary loan, e-resources, library systems. There was no formal reason for me to explore that. My employer wouldn't necessarily have said, yes, go spend time and resources learning about publishing, right? But NASIG publishes their conference proceedings, and they have volunteers who work on a committee to make that happen. And I was really curious about what happened behind the scenes. So I applied to serve on that committee, and luckily, yay, they accepted my application. And so I was able to spend 2 years learning more about that side of production and what happened with copy editing and typesetting, and really just kind of, get that experience, but also get something on my CV to formalize that experience. I could point to it and say, I didn't just learn this, I contributed to a thing. And that opened some doors for me with other publishing opportunities. And now my job is working in publishing technology. So I think that it created a very unique value proposition in giving me a gateway to explore something that otherwise would have been very challenging to get my foot in the door for. But it's hard to pick a singular moment.
Yeah, same here. I think for me, I think UKSG like NASIG is, I think we play a quite unique role in bringing those different parts of the information community together in a way that isn't a buyer and seller relationship. Because so much of, as a librarian, when I was a librarian, it was very much, you the only time you spoke to publishers was when they were trying to sell you something, and you were trying to haggle the price down. So it was great to meet people and in a new context, and understand actually what skills and they and knowledge and they brought to the table. And actually, I think it means that you can collaborate to find quite innovative solutions when you take away that kind of transactional part of the relationship. But for me, so I'm not going to say two things. I know it's not allowed. But the other thing for me was actually, I think it completely enabled me to completely change direction in terms of where my career was going, because being involved with and actually then becoming chair of the board for our open access journal gave me a real insight into what journal publishing is actually all about. All the processes behind it, all the everything which you know some of when you're a librarian, but the kind of the under the bonnet view was really interesting. And I think that was really working at the kind of in between of libraries and publishing, which really gave me the confidence to apply for the role at DOAJ, which again is an organisation which works at the cusp between libraries and publishing. I'm really interested in some of the responses that we've got on the Wordle. I don't know if anyone from the audience would like to say something about what they have got from their involvement within a professional organisation. I'm quite interested in the responses on Hive Mind and. I have the Donahue, so if you want to say something, for it to be recorded. Does anybody have anything to say? I'm pretty loud. No,
We're recording it.
I am a librarian, but work for a vendor. So to interact with librarians, they are, like Michelle, my customer. So I can't really, I have to be on. And therefore, when I can go to a NASIG meeting or a Charleston conference and those types of things, and if I'm on the blogs and listservs and listen, I can hear what you all are doing, and I don't have to worry about keeping you happy, and I can just hear you and listen to what you're saying. So it does, those of us who are librarians but work for vendors, that is another way to keep abreast of what's going on.
Thank you.
Tasha from Counter, and also full transparency, one of the UKSG trustees. So I owe my involvement with Counter to UKSG. I'd never been involved in the organisation until I offered to write what were known as the Idiot's Guides and are now the Friendly Guides to Counter. And that gave me an entry into a library community that had never been available to me as somebody who is, a recovering publisher. That community aspect of what UKSG offers is so important because you can learn from each other in a way that you can't do purely online.
So, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's all right. Hi, my name is Matthew. I work Wiley. I'm also a librarian defector working for a publisher. And to echo the comments made earlier too, that for me, it's largely been about community. So I kind of had an identity crisis and joined commercial publishing. But when I joined NASIG, I felt welcomed. And there's a lot of rhetoric in this industry, right? What are publishers doing? What are libraries doing? And there, I felt like I was a part of something. People just welcomed me. Didn't matter what it said under my name. And that was really important, especially being so early in my career, my transition over to the corporate side. And on the other side of the coin too is that I'm carrying the water for my company as well to show that we do care about issues that are important to our library partners as well. So it kind of works both ways. Yes, I benefit from it, but certainly my parent organization does as well. And I'm happy to do it because you learn so much at these places, either, formally through workshops or even informally over drinks or board games or whatever's happening at your conferences.
Hi, all. Sarah Swagger, University of South Florida. I'm going to come at it from the other direction because I have only had one personal experience with a professional organization and it didn't do much for me. And part of it is my fault. And I just want to, maybe this is like a good learning experience, but I was a solo librarian for my first professional librarian position. So I think it was a good experience ultimately that I did that. So I had joined a state group and I really didn't get anything from it. One, because I was so busy and so out of my comfort zone that I was so focused on just what the heck do I need to do to serve these students and these faculty members. But also I felt like that particular organization probably could have done more for first time, very early career, just starting out librarians to kind of reach out and do some more mentorship. So just wanted to offer my perspective on that.
Anyone else want to contribute at this point? Thank you for all of those, and I think it's really interesting to hear that response, and that's something that I think we as professional organisations need to take on board. I think we do. I think we work hard to try and be as inclusive as we can and to and provide opportunities for first timers, but there's always more that we can do. Okay. Now I'm going to transfer seamlessly back to our Google Slides. Yes. That's a skill I didn't have until about 4 o'clock this morning. So that's something something I've got from being involved in a professional organisation. So Courtney and I thought it would be useful actually, and some of these things you've already covered, to go through what we see as the benefits of being involved in a professional organisation, making sure you get the most of your membership. Now I know NASIG has a formal mentorship programme, doesn't it? It's not something we do have at UKSG, but I would say if you have the opportunity to take up a mentoring scheme, certainly do that. And I would say that is just as valid as a mentor, as a mentee. I certainly mentored people and learned just as much from them as they have from me.
And just to add to that really briefly, it can feel like maybe the mentor needs to have all the answers, and imposter syndrome can creep into that sometimes. And I just want to say it. Expertise is relative. You don't have to know everything to know enough to help somebody who's trying to sort it out and figure out things. So you have a lot to offer. You don't have to have all the answers. Mentors are really, really powerful. So just want to plug that because I've felt it before, and I've talked to people who've been dealing with that. And imposter syndrome can be very difficult to dispel.
Yeah.
And I will echo, look for opportunities wherever you can. Like one thing, I got a second master's degree in education, and I fully did not want to be a teacher whenever I went through my practicum, but I'm so grateful that I did because I learned about the growth mindset. And really, you just look for opportunities, continually look for opportunities. I think I have now I think I have like 3 or 4 mentors just solely because I saw something on like ALA Connect and like, oh yes, I would love to be your mentee. Or I joined up with OLAC, on the online audiovisual catalogers. That is not anything that I do, but I joined it because they have a mentoring program, and I love my mentor. She's amazing. So, just look for those opportunities.
Thank you. And the next point is something that has come up really around making sure that you don't just stick to your own tribe when you're involved. Don't just, if you are a librarian, don't just talk to the other librarians on the committee or in the group, but really make an effort to learn about other parts of the sector, because it really is a fantastic opportunity, and it gives you all sorts of insights and can lead to exciting collaborations. There's also, of course, something there around skills development as well, because these professional organisations really do give opportunities for you to develop skills that, particularly if you're new to the profession, you might not be able to gain experience of as part of your day-to-day job. So things like committee work or projects, standing up and doing a presentation, publishing an article, planning an event. Those are all things that are really useful, great to have on your CV when you get to your next job. So I'd really recommend that you take up those opportunities as well. And then, of course, there are perks of being involved in terms of, for example, getting discounts on attending events and so on. So please do make the most of those. Do you have any more to add, Courtney, to what I've said?
I think you've covered it beautifully. But I would just say, if you're going to become a member of an organization, I would just say, try to take advantage of all of the opportunities, even something that maybe doesn't seem really relevant to you at first. I would say, if you can, give it a try if you're going to be a member. And sometimes you'll be surprised by those things that didn't necessarily feel like, oh, I need to do that. And then, you learn something unexpected. There's a lot of serendipity in our career paths. And I think that's something that also comes with being a member of a professional organization, getting to experience that serendipitous encounter.
And I'll make a plug for NASIG. If you haven't joined, they have a first timer award. I won that award and was able to go to the conference in Baltimore for free. And all I had to do basically was just like write an essay about like how this would impact my career. And like, that was like the easiest thing ever. So it was amazing. So
absolutely. And there is also the Merriman Award, isn't there, which enables you to attend both UKSG in the UK and NASIG as well. So that is a really,
that's a future plan.
Yeah, that's and that's so I would really encourage people to apply for that. That's a great opportunity.
Yes.
And I realize that we're definitely focusing on UKSG and NASIG because they tend to be very tech services oriented. But there are other professional organizations at like the state or regional level. There's SSP. I feel like ALA's programming has kind of drifted away from tech services, but there are definitely working groups or roundtables that can be helpful. So regardless of the professional organization that you decide to be involved in, if you do want to go that route, I think these guidelines could be helpful. I don't want to come across like we're trying to like pressure people. It's not a hard sell, I promise,
No. Come and hang out with the cool kids.
We do have board game night at NASIG, just saying.
We have quiz night at UKSG.
That's enviable. We might need to plan that for next year.
So what we want to do for the last part of this session is look to the future. And in a minute, we're going to be asking you what you think we should be looking at for the future. So I was going to leave that thought buzzing around in your head while I give some perspectives from me and UKSG, and then Courtney can from NASIG. So I think that diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility are priority areas for both organisations. I'm sure we can hear some more about the NASIG perspective, but we know that in the UK, the scholarly communications industry isn't particularly representative of society as a whole. And I would say that UKSG reflects that. We've recently worked with a consultant to kind of look at how we can best address those areas. And I talked just about how I got involved, and I got involved through somebody I know, and that is a problem, because that means we end up with more people who are like the people who are already on the committee. So really a big challenge for us is going beyond the people we already know and reaching other groups, and making sure that they feel welcome and involved and want to be involved in the running of our organizations. So that's a key priority for us. The other one, you put sustainability, Courtney, and I'm really interested on your take on this, because I'm thinking very much from a UKSG point of view in terms of the longevity of our organisation, because we really struggled through COVID. We had to cancel our conference, and so our finances took a massive hit, because it's a conference that supports all of our activities. So our priorities around money, but it's also thinking about how can we build sustainability into a volunteer-led organisation, where somebody's involved for a couple of years and then they disappear. So how do you kind of get momentum? How do you do succession planning? How do you keep moving forward? Obviously, advocacy, in terms of advocating for the importance of what we do, is a focus. And then the last point around aligning with current needs is really challenging, because current needs change all the time. We move in a we live in a really fast-moving sector. Things are changing all the time. How can our programming in terms of events reflect what the needs are of our community? So that's also a challenge for us. So I'm going to swap physically with Courtney now and ask her to give the NASIG perspective.
So very similar to what Joanna described for UKSG, the future of NASIG is very much oriented around these goals. Diversity, equity, and inclusion, very important to us. We've made, I would say, a lot of good progress in terms of programming and making our programming more diverse and including disparate voices, different voices. I think we have more work to do on that, especially when it comes to recruitment and building diversity into every aspect of the organization. Sustainability, as Joanna said, has a fiscal component to it. We also have had some harder times because of the pandemic and just the disruption of our operations, like the conferences. But sustainability for us as well, I think, involves stewardship of members' time and resources. We're funded by membership dues and money from sponsors, and sustainability also involves being very pragmatic about how we're using those resources to improve industry, improve as much as we can in our community, and not just for the next 6 months, but what will benefit 5 years from now, 6 years from now, trying to be forward thinking as much as possible, given all the unknowns that we're still trying to unpack. Aligning with current needs is a big challenge. I think a lot of the needs that we were geared towards meeting have shifted really dramatically, in part exacerbated by the pandemic, but some change was already, happening. There were already seeds of change, and we've just seen them kind of blossom in different ways, and making sure that our strategic vision really represents what the membership is looking for and coming to us to help with. That's a big challenge going forward, and something we're committed to figuring out in more detail. So now we have a discussion question. It's not a poll this time. So we'd like to know, as Joanna, indicated, what you need or what you would think a professional organization should look to in the future, regardless of whether or not you are affiliated with a professional organization. I think it's important for us to take stock of what we're doing and see what are necessary and how to better address the needs of our communities.